Delver lists for a while. He's got 4 Gut Shot along with 4 Vapor Snag. Those are 2 of the major low-cost, clearing the way, get in there type of cards.
Grim Lavamancer, a card that's really well positioned right now with all these Delver decks around, that many people haven't been playing, basically because mana bases can't support it. The decks that are playing red are usually these Primeval Titan decks that only have a few sources of red, or most of their red lands are things like Rootbound Crag, so they come into play tapped if you're trying to cast them on turn 1. Grim Lavamancer also not great synergy with the Wolfrun Shell because you're playing board sweepers that would actually kill the Lavamancer.
Yep.
But when you're playing cards like Thought Scour in a red deck, suddenly Grim Lavamancer just becomes this incredible creature. Thought Scour with Grim Lavamancer is just an unbelievable interaction.
Really exciting to see this deck kind of putting together some of the pieces and seeing it have some success today.
Yeah, one of the interesting parts about Blue-Red Delver is it's a deck that a lot of people tried to make work previous to Dark Ascension that they just had trouble with. That the mana base was always just too bad for it to perform very well. But the addition of Evolving Wilds means that this mana base isn't even that bad anymore.
Yep. Yeah, and also Thought Scour and Faithless Looting, both very strong. So Ryan leads off with a Forest and passes over to Austin.
Alright, so Austin leads things off with that Evolving Wilds that we spoke about. And it's going to smooth up his mana a little bit. Ryan playing a Strangleroot Geist on turn 2, able to knock Austin down to 18 here. And Strangleroot Geist very strong against red decks.
Yeah. The mono-green deck was already around, but there definitely was a big kick, and I think it jumped up a tier when it got Strangleroot Geist.
Oh, certainly. I think that I think this deck is something that we're going to get very used to seeing.
Yep. Austin goes and gets an island with his wilds, and there's a mountain, and the Grim Lavamancer drops out.
That's another thing that we could say about the Evolving Wilds is that they synergize well with that Grim Lavamancer.
Yep. A Gut Shot from Ryan. We were talking about how Austin's packing a full set, but Ryan also has a pair of them in his main deck.
Yeah, and those are going to be really good against Austin. They work really well against his Delvers, against his Grim Lavamancers, and they even kill his Snapcaster Mages.
Yep.
The only card in Austin's deck that isn't killed by a Gut Shot is Chandra's Phoenix. And a Sword of War and Peace from Ryan. That's going to be pretty hard for Austin to deal with if it ever gets equipped.
So Austin Vapor snagged the Strangleroot Geist, if you were wondering where it went.
That's an interesting choice by Austin to Vapor snag it at that point. Perhaps he has a counterspell and he's planning on countering it on its way back down. But a Thrun punishes Austin for passing the turn without casting any spells. And that's one of the big things about Thrun is that a lot of the times these blue decks, you have to make the decision of, am I going to play my spell or am I going to pass and leave counter magic open? And if somebody passes and leaves counter magic open and you have a Thrun in your hand, you can punish them pretty heavily by just casting this uncounterable spell and making them just waste the whole turn.
Yep, and that's Ryan's only Thrun. But Thrun picking up that sword and starting to swing is going to be pretty tough for Austin to deal with. I don't think he has much that's going to give him a good defense against a 6/6 that gains life and hits for more damage.
Sudden impact plus life gain, half a Gerard's wisdom.
And there's a Ponder from Austin, and he's just looking for an answer.
And at this point, I don't think there's a single card in Austin's deck that can save him from this.
Thrun is most definitely Ryan's most potent weapon in this matchup, and I'm surprised that he doesn't have more of them in the sideboard.
Yeah, I'm also surprised there's only one copy of Thrun. We covered a match between Ryan and another mono green player in round 2, and Ryan had made some mistakes when sideboarding, and in between rounds I'd actually found him. We talked for a little bit, and he asked me about his play. And I talked to him about sideboarding, and he said that he had played against 3 more mono green decks since then, and had sideboarded how I told him to every time, and was very, very happy that I told him to bring his Glissa in, because it won him 2 of his matches. So, Ryan sitting at 5-0 now.
Austin spends some time figuring out what order to put those in, leaves them on top, draws, and there's a Delver.
And at this point, Austin really just has to hope that Ryan overextends with his hand and plays things that Austin can interact with, so that Austin can empty his hand in the same regard and just race Ryan But I think Ryan's going to know that he can just play out like maybe one threat a turn and still easily win this race.
Well, Austin's already missed a land drop, which puts him behind. You know, when you're trying to catch up, missing those land drops is just it's a killer. So that looks like a Garrick.
Yeah, I believe that is a Garrick Relentless, and that's going to kill this Delver of Secrets and flip over, becoming Garrick the Veiled Curse.
The Veil Curse. Yep.
Yes. Bashing him for 4. Austin falls to 14 here. And now things are looking even more grim for Austin, as there's a Planeswalker on the other end of the table also. Austin's in a weird spot here. When I'm this far behind in a game, oftentimes I'm going to want to just concede and not show my opponent what else is in my deck, especially when I'm playing a rogue deck like Austin's.
Yeah, it's interesting choice here because he doesn't have really any way to interact with Thrun, but he's going to go look for more, and showing him a Ponder obviously isn't going to hurt.
Yeah, showing him Ponder is no big deal. I think the only card you really want to avoid showing him would be maybe the Faithless Looting.
The Phoenix.
Perhaps. I mean,
at this point, he's seen Delver, he's seen Grim Lavamancer. It's a situation where Ryan probably has a decent idea of what he wants to do. It's kind of a counter burn strategy that he's probably putting him on, but maybe he can keep playing guys and getting in the way, but that doesn't seem like it's going to get him back into this game.
Yeah, the other issue is that Ryan has Corrosive Gale on his sideboard, and if he knows his opponent is playing Delvers in addition to Chandra's Phoenixes, it's very likely that he's going to bring that in.
Yeah. Strangleroot Geist meets that Monoleak that we think he had up earlier on in the game. But Thrun grabs the sword, swings in, and Austin's got to decide whether or not he's going to be throwing away his Delver to prevent some damage. Looks like he's got 3 cards in hand, so that Thrun is swinging for 9.
Yeah, and that's a lot. And now this Garrick's going to start ticking up too and making more wolves, making the game even further out of reach for Austin at this point. I'm interested to see how people end up reacting to this mono green deck. It's something that didn't show up in the Pro Tour in the numbers that I thought it would. There were some people who went 4-1 with it. It wasn't, as popular as one might expect after it had such a breakout performance last week in Richmond. But I think the Pro Tour may have had more variety of, card experimentation. Cards like Falkenrath Aristocrat are extremely difficult for the mono green deck to deal with and almost win the game by themselves.
So Austin decides that that damage is pretty important. Goes ahead and throws the Delver away. Now the other thing is,
Ryan makes a wolf before passing.
I think that Ryan makes a wolf. I think that the Pro Tour, a lot of the testing was probably done by the time that the Open came around, and those lists kind of got thrown into the gauntlet that was already established for a lot of the pros. And so I don't think there were that many people who were looking to pick up a deck last weekend. Pick up, what's going to be, in the metagame, how do other people see it, kind of add some things into their own gauntlets. But probably a lot of the choices were made by the time that the Open Series results went up last week.
Yeah. And that's a very reasonable thing. I've, played in Pro Tours where I've had my full 75 and played it exactly from the way it was, maybe 10 days before the event even happened.
Yep.
Austin trying to figure out his best course of actions here. I think at this point it's going to be pretty rough. And he shows him the Phoenix, and he's going to attack the Garrick, put it down to 1, and
that's an interesting choice because he does have a Vapor Snag in hand, which is up right now. But coming back over to Ryan, that Vapor Snag doesn't help against the Thrun, which is going to come in and hit for I believe it's going to hit for 9 again.
Yeah. Wolf also coming in. That'll put Austin down to 4 here.
Although I guess the Phoenix can't block Thrun anyways with the sword on it.
Oh yeah.
So
and that sword makes the Thrun a world of hurt for any deck that plays red or white. Vapor Snag on the Wolf. It's gonna drop Ryan down to 16.
I don't think the Phoenix is getting it.
I doubt it.
But that will drop down the damage that he's taking from the sword, so he'll only take 6 from Thrun, 2 from the sword.
Yeah.
Drop down to 8. And it looks like Ryan should gain 4, so he should wind up right back at 20.
And another 4/4 with Hexproof for Ryan. And Hexproof seems to be
those Vapor
terribly
Snags
difficult for Austin.
Look not too good. So,
Ryan is using the Garrick Veil Cursed, is Survival of the Fittest ability to sacrifice that Llanowar Elves, and he's going to search his library for any creature he desires. And he searched his library for Strangleroot Geist.
Just put some more
reasonable
pressure on.
I mean, the thing is now he has, the Thrun is almost certainly going to get blocked if his opponent is going to live, but even if the Thrun gets blocked now, his opponent still has to deal with a Hexproof Dungrove Elder and now a 2/2 haste, and his opponent's at 6. So that's very good, foresight that in this scenario that his opponent has something to block the Thrun, next turn he's still going to be able to kill him by searching for that Strangleroot Geist.
And Austin comes to the conclusion that that we have, and we're moving on to game 2, where Austin will be on the play, and I think that makes a difference in this matchup.
Oh, definitely.
Both these decks really want to be setting the tempo, and Austin's even more than Ryan.
I think Ryan's going to be happy, though. He gets to bring in Daybreak Ranger and a few copies of Corrosive Gale. Those are going to be pretty good here.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, Austin on the other side has access to...
I think those Manic Vandals may come in as an answer to the swords.
Yeah, he's going to bring in Manic Vandal and Mental Misstep, I assume.
That's certainly a possibility, but
Arc Trail also a decent card against Ryan. It's strange though, these cheap red removal spells. While they're still strong against Llanowar Elves and Birds of Paradise and things like that, and they're obviously Arc Trail very strong against Daybreak Ranger, which Austin may not know about. Arc Trail is not very good against Strangleroot Geist.
Nope. Honestly, nothing's all that good against Strangleroot Geist.
Yeah, Strangleroot Geist is extremely strong. I mean, even when you look at the cards that can deal with it, and cards that are usually in Modern or Legacy, if you're playing Modern and somebody casts the Path to Exile on your Strangleroot Geist when you attack, you just cast a Rampant Growth and your opponent spent a card and mana, and you still got a Rampant Growth. It's a pretty powerful spell, and I wouldn't be surprised if Strangleroot Geist started showing up in all sorts of formats.
You just got to find a green deck that wants to be aggressive.
Yeah, and I mean, double green is something that in Standard kind of ties your hands. It means that you really can only play mono green or maybe just splash white or red for something like very specific. Whereas when you're looking at a format like Modern, you can play double green in a deck that's 2 or 3 colors without much of an issue. The ability to use fetch lands in conjunction with the Ravnica shock lands really,
and
just
Legacy,
it out.
I would not be surprised to see Strangleroot Geist popping up in some bug builds.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a threat that keeps on coming, and when you're playing against these rug decks, it's so good against the rug tempo decks, rug Delver, all those types of decks have a huge problem dealing with Strangleroot Geist. Whereas the one issue is that it still dies to swords, but what doesn't? That's kind of the thing.
Yeah. That's definitely something that could hold it back in Legacy, is a lot of the spot removal exiles rather than destroys. And so the Undying doesn't come up as much.
I'm a proponent of Blue-White Blade in Legacy.
It's pretty hard not to be. It's pretty hard not to be. It's a very strong archetype, very consistent.
Yeah, it hasn't been putting up numbers in the past few weeks, but when you go back and you look at the tournaments, very few people are actually playing with it, which is pretty surprising to me.
Yeah.
You can play what happens when the worst card in your deck is Stoneforge Mystic? I guess the worst card is probably Force of Will. So that's because Stoneforge Mystic's better than Force of Will, right? But I mean, back to this game. Now we're gonna get to see how both these players sideboarded. I'm interested to see whether or not Ryan decided to bring in the Daybreak Ranger. I mean, it's very strong against Austin because he has Delvers and Chandra's Phoenixes.
Both of which he saw.
Yeah, both of which he saw. But in the same sense, the Daybreak Ranger is a 3-mana creature that dies to a lot of burn spells. And he doesn't know that Austin's burn spells are just gut shots and brimstone volleys, so it's not really an issue to spend 3 mana, and he might be worried about getting incinerated or galvanic blasted.
Well, he also saw the Grim Lavamancer, who is a pretty good answer to Daybreak Ranger.
Certainly. And Grim Lavamancer is very hard for Ryan to get off the table. Last game, he was lucky enough to have one of the 2 gut shots in his deck. But if he had not, that game would have been much different.
So it's going to be interesting. Ryan hit both of his hexproof creatures last game, and so we'll see whether or not he can work his way into a Dungrove Elder or his 1 Thrun again.
And I mean, Ryan was telling me that he really enjoyed playing Pure Steel Paladin over the course of the last year, and he finally decided to put it down this week to pick up this mono green deck. And he likes the mono green deck because he said that in every format he just always wants to be playing the best sword deck, and he feels that the mono green deck is the best sword deck because it just casts Sword and War and Peace on turn 2 or Sword of Feast and Famine on turn 2, and most decks just lose to that, and he loves it.
There are worse strategies. Definitely a pretty good one.
And now we're going to see whether or not he has the turn 2 sword. And
all right, so Ryan's sending it back. Saw some checklist cards in there, so it looks like he's kept in at least some of the Daybreak Rangers because he's only got, unless he had multiple Garruk Relentlesses. He's got 1 Garruk Primal Hunter and 3 Garruk Relentless.
Yeah, over the course of today, we've seen different variations on the numbers of Planeswalkers in the mono green decks. Ryan is the only person we've seen who's playing 3 Garruk Relentless and 1 Garruk Primal Hunter. We've seen a lot of people playing it the other way around, 3 Primal Hunters and 1 Relentless. Ryan said, he likes Primal Hunter. He thinks it's an incredibly strong card, but he just feels like having the 4-drop is just so much better because you have these birds and elves, and you can just lead into it so well.
So Austin leads off. We've seen that one before. Turn 1 Delver.
Turn 1 Island Delver, the most dreaded play to see across the table when you're playing this format. And Llanowar Elves. Let's see if Austin's fine.
So they're both off to a start. Austin gets aggressive, flipping over into Insectile Aberration.
And flipping your Delver on turn 1. Pretty
Cold.
Nice. And now, if we look at Austin's deck list here, he's got, we're not sure after sideboarding, but I'm assuming he still has the same creature count. So it looks like he has 24 cards that would flip the Delver in this deck. So he's almost 50% to flip it, which is really good. That's much better than most Delver decks.
Passes with Mana Leak, Mana Open. He also does have the Vapor Snag, which
Ryan knows about the Vapor Snag too, so let's see what happens here.
3/4
Corrosive Gale.
There's a Mana Leak.
Austin decides to Mana Leak that. It seems reasonable enough.
And that's interesting because Corrosive Gale seems to me like a card that you really want to try and get a 2-for-1. Like it's in there to be a blowout card, and using it 1-for-1 on turn 2 means he probably didn't have much better to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty telling about his hand. The major issue, like when you're playing these mono green decks and you have a card like Corrosive Gale, I mean, it only does damage to creatures, not to players, so you don't have to worry about taking too much damage in the beginning before you cast it. You really just want to develop a board and then cast Corrosive Gale and empty your opponent's board and just start attacking them.
Yep. A Grim Lavamancer from Austin after a Ponder, and passes back over. Ryan plays his third forest, and that's all he's got. He's got 24 forests, so if he's dropping a land, it's going to be a green basic. Here's 4, and he had a green sun zenith in hand, so I would guess this is a Dungrove Elder.
As would I. Hexproof creatures, extremely strong against Austin's deck. A lot of the time against this deck, you may want to search for a Daybreak Ranger, but you certainly don't want to do that when your opponent has a Grim Lavamancer in play.
And 2 cards in the bin.
Now Austin has the option of Vapor snagging the Llanowar Elf on his opponent's end step. I might go ahead and do that. It looked like my opponent didn't have many options at 3 mana, so by bouncing that Llanowar Elf, you may end up time-walking your opponent. Ryan falls down to 11 here from another attack from the Insectile Aberration, and Austin chooses to pass without using the Grim Lavamancer on the Elf.
Or the Vapor Snag.
Yeah.
He's got some options, but being run over by a bunch of hexproof creatures, I don't know that I wouldn't have put that elf back in his hand. Dungrove Elder gets in for 3, dropping Austin to 17.
And not killing that elf may prove to be problematic for Austin. Oh, but it's just a gut shot that deals with this Grim Lavamancer now. And Ryan wisely using that gut shot before he attempts to cast a bigger spell, dodging Mana Leak altogether. Austin's going to shoot this Llanowar Elf, but in doing so,
he's trying
he will
to
have
decide
no more
whether or not he
Snapcaster
goes to the
targets.
head. If he goes to the head, he takes it down to 3 shots from the Delver to win the game.
Yeah.
Whereas if he takes out the elf,
Oh,
and
see,
Ryan
actually,
taps in response. Then Austin Vapor Snags his own Grim Lavamancer.
And I like that play a lot.
Ryan currently has 1 green floating from the tapped elf. So 3 looks like it's going to bring down a Daybreak Ranger.
Yeah, and that Daybreak Ranger is going to be pretty good here. Sure, Austin's going to have the Grim Lavamancer next turn, but by then Ryan will be able to flip the Daybreak Ranger.
Now, there'd still be an opportunity, even if Austin decided to not play anything and flip the Daybreak Ranger, because Ryan doesn't have any way to activate the fight ability if it flips over to Nightfall Predator.
You're right, he doesn't have any Birds of Paradise right now in play, so Ryan's going to just have to tap this Daybreak Ranger during his main phase, kill that Insectile Aberration.
Now that Ratchet Bomb's interesting because Ryan right now is kind of all in on 3.
Yeah, I mean, if that Ratchet Bomb gets to stick out for a little while.
Well,
but it
he
won't.
goes more all in on 3, but the Viridian Corruptor takes out the Ratchet Bomb before it can do a whole bunch of damage.
And a Dungrove Elder coming into the red zone here for Ryan. Going to drop Austin down to 12.
Should only drop down to 13. Yeah, it's
Oh,
still
he
only
only had 3?
still only 3.
Oh, okay. I
Ryan's
thought he had
doing
4.
pretty well for having stalled out on mana. Another Delver comes down, and with the active Grim Lavamancer, that means he's going to be able to take out the Daybreak Ranger.
And that's still a decently favorable trade for Ryan. He was able to kill a Delver with that Daybreak Ranger and force his opponent to, use a Lavamancer activation and play the Lavamancer just to deal with it.
Yep. Ryan is dangerously low on life, though. At 6, he's this is interesting. Was that a Corrosive Gale?
Yes.
Do you know why?
Perhaps he doesn't want his Daybreak Ranger to flip?
Ah. I suppose that's possible, but that seems very strange.
It does seem
Since
very strange to me, yes.
His Daybreak Ranger was dying there anyways.
Yes.
And actually, if he'd been able to, it would have been very nice to get it to flip
Be a
over
4/4,
there.
Yeah.
And the Corrosive Gale could have dealt with a flipped Delver. So that seems like
Yeah, it seems very
he may have just dug himself a hole here that's going to be hard to get out of.
He may have done a bad play. Dungrove.
The Dungrove Elder goes up to 4/4 though, so that's
Yeah. And Austin's just going to chump block it with the Manic Vandal. That's pretty aggressive chump block when your opponent's a 6 too. And there's a Garrick of the Veiled Curse.
Yep.
Or Garrick Relentless right now.
Yep. Although I would guess that very quickly that will turn into a Garrick the Veil Cursed, and it'll be an interesting decision for what Austin wants to shoot.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard right now. Like, Delver kills you in 2 turns if it ever flips, but at the same time, Grim Lavamancer can just start shooting you, and your opponent's playing red cards. So you could just die at any moment.
Now, if Ryan uses it on the Grim Lavamancer, obviously there's going to be an activation. Where do you think it should go? It's going to activate targeting Ryan, but should he redirect the damage to Garrick?
I don't think he should redirect the damage to Garrick. I think that I think Austin has enough burn spells in his deck that, you know, he's probably favored to win at this point just by. I saw his hand was red cards, so I think he just has perhaps a Brimstone Volley in his hand that can just end the game. Oh no, so he must not have that Brimstone Volley then. Austin fails to flip again. And suddenly it's looking like Ryan might actually be back in this game, despite being on 6 against the red deck.
Another land, both players have 1 card in hand that they don't seem all that interested in looking at. Austin trying to figure out what that card can do. 6 land is a whole lot for this deck. It does not need that much. I think I probably would have held on to that land in case I drew a Faithless Looting just to be able to hold on to something else.
I definitely agree. When you're playing Careful Study effects like that, they're actually card disadvantage, unless you have something like a Chandra's Phoenix to work with it. So by holding those lands in your hand, you're able to exchange lands that you don't need, and nothing in this deck costs more than 3, I'm sure. And cash in those lands for actual cards later on in the game.
Brimstone Volley, Chandra's Phoenix, and flashing back Faithless Looting are the most expensive things to do in this deck. Green Sun Zenith for 3.
And I assume that's another Dungrove Elder?
I can't imagine, unless he wanted to bring out a Daybreak Ranger to defend against the Delver flipping over. I think Dungrove Elder is the correct choice here. And we had an attack from Ryan, which I believe should drop Austin to 9.
Yes.
And another land comes down. I'm surprised, but here's 3 for what?
That's 3 mana? Perhaps he's casting a Brimstone Volley, though. Oh no, another Manic Vandal.
Another Manic Vandal.
Not the card he really wants here.
Now, is it possible that Faithless Looting came out, so he's not concerned about that? We've seen the 2 Manic Vandals, so they definitely came in. But regardless, I think I'd be holding a card just to bluff a counter.
Yeah, at this point you're just, very open to things.
And the Manic Vandal absolutely wants to drop down. Maybe he dropped the Evolving Wilds to kind of try and get another land out of his deck and get something else in there.
And that's it. Ryan wins, despite Austin having a commanding lead at an earlier point in that game. And I really thought Austin had a brimstone volley in his hand.
That Daybreak Ranger was very important.
Yeah.
And
it killing that one Delver was super important.
Austin was pretty much all in on that one Delver, and after that was done, pretty weak. So we saw a couple of interesting